As we continue on with our series reviewing figure posing apps, we're going to shift away from tools for manga and comic book artists and start looking at something that's a little more geared towards traditional academic learning. And that's going to come in the form of a very unique app called PoseIt. PoseIt is a very different posing app compared to others on the market in that its focus isn't really on anatomy or realism, but rather on replicating one of the oldest artistic tools in the drawing Mannequin. What you'll notice immediately about this app is simply the quality of its graphics. The mannequins are highly detailed with beautifully rendered wood grain textures, and when coupled with the lighting controls, makes for a very lifelike model to study from. If there's one area where PoseIt really shines over its competitors, it's the quality of its graphics. That high quality can come at the price of your tablet's performance, but there are options available to reduce the render quality to something that your tablet can handle. Whilst there isn't a huge library of mannequins to choose from, each one is very unique in its own right. You have both standard male and female figures, a skeleton, a female anime model, an écorché model, and surprisingly, even a werewolf mannequin to pose with. But there's also a unique feature that allows you to craft your own custom mannequin by essentially Frankensteining pieces of these models together. It's a very novel idea and one that you're not going to find in any other posing app. For posing controls, using one finger will allow for individual joint movements, but two-finger controls opens up a whole new range of possibilities. If you use the two-finger holding gestures, it will allow your mannequin to perform relative body movements, almost like you're actually controlling a puppet on strings. This dynamic posing allows for the mannequins to behave in a much more realistic way. There's also a useful feature which will detect when your model touches the ground plane, which allows for some very natural looking poses to form. If you're not sure where to begin with your figures, there's a series of pose presets to help you out. There's also a bunch of hand presets to choose from, alongside more advanced thumb and finger controls. If there's one feature that's worth getting the app alone for, it's probably the dynamic lighting. PoseIt has taken a much more realistic approach to its models, which means the lighting also behaves in a far more natural way. What helps with this lighting is the option to turn on ambient occlusion, which helps to create more natural looking shadows. The controls themselves are pretty standard, allowing for two direct light sources to be adjusted alongside environmental lighting. Also included is a very useful point light, which basically acts like a light bulb that you can place anywhere in your scene. When it comes to props, the library here isn't as vast as other posing apps. There are some basic shapes, a handful of weapons, a selection of tools and costume items, and also a horse mannequin, which has a useful animation slider. Another useful option is the magnet icon, which locks your prop into place so that it moves relative to your figure. Once your scene is finished, you can either export it as an image or export it as a 3D model for use in other 3D applications. So are there any negatives about the app? Well, probably the biggest issue is that whilst the app is very polished, moving the mannequins around takes a little bit of getting used to. As dynamic as the posing can get, having to switch between one finger and two finger holding gestures to change positioning means you have to build up a little bit of muscle memory in order to understand how to properly pose things. That finger switching also makes things a little bit trickier when it comes to more subtle adjustments. There are no access controls or pivot points to select like in other apps, so you'll have to spend a little bit of time getting used to how the model moves. As for the custom mannequin building, as unique as the concept is, it does have some notable limitations, mostly the fact that you can't actually import your custom creation into a scene. You're unfortunately stuck posing it within the creation window only. It's a very good idea that unfortunately doesn't quite live up to its potential. There's also a tendency, at least on the iPad, for the app to crash occasionally, so it's best to save your scene as you go along. But overall, PoseIt is still an app that you're going to find a lot of real value in. Some artists might find the lack of real human models a turn off, but if a simplified model is all you need, then this is a great app to have. Beginner artists in particular who are looking for a way to simplify the complexities of the human figure couldn't ask for a better tool to help them out. There's a bunch of unique features, wonderful dynamic posing and lighting controls, and is available on iPad and Android.